picture a building that holds more people than a small town. Now fill it with the smell of cabbage boiling at 3 in the morning, coal smoke so thick it stains the walls brown, and the particular silence of people too tired to even cry. Add a stairwell that hasn't been mopped in 6 weeks, a toilet shared by 14 families, and walls so thin you can hear your neighbour's dreams. That's a Lower East Side tenement in 1932. The greatest city in the world, the most magnificent skyline on earth, a place where you could look up and see a skyscraper taller than anything ever built by human hands, and then look down and see a man selling his last pair of shoes on the corner so he could buy bread. We're going back there tonight. Not as tourists looking at vintage photographs and sepia-tinted newsreels. We're living it. 1 week, 1 building, 1 narrow bed that you share with a stranger whose name you don't always know, because the bed doesn't belong to either of you. It belongs to whoever just got off shift. So, I make these history stories, and honestly, I genuinely don't know if you're listening to fall asleep or because you want to feel better about your apartment. Either way, this one's going to get under your skin. Get comfortable. The mattress might smell a little. That's authentic. Here we go. Here's the first thing you need to understand about the Depression. It didn't start with a bang. It started with a door not opening. Not a dramatic door. Not a great iron door with a padlock and a sign. Just a regular wooden door at the end of a regular city block. The kind of door you've knocked on 100 times before. The kind that leads into a hiring office or a factory floor or a dock where they're loading cargo. You knock. You wait. Nothing. You try again tomorrow. Nothing. The week after that, there are 20 other men behind you on the sidewalk, all of them trying the same door. And still nothing. That's the Depression. It's not one catastrophic moment. It's the slow accumulation of doors that don't open. It's counting the coins in your pocket every night and knowing the numbers getting smaller, not larger. It's the particular mathematics of hunger, where you start doing arithmetic in your head that you never had to do before. If I eat 1 meal today instead of 2, I can make this last until Thursday. If I skip the subway and walk, that's a nickel saved. If I sell the coat, I can pay rent, but not eat. If I sell the coat and don't pay rent, I'm on the street by Friday. Your name is Thomas Brody. You're 23 years old. You came to New York City from Morgantown, West Virginia, in the spring of 1932, with $14.40, a letter of introduction from your uncle's friend, and the kind of confidence that only lasts until you've actually been to New York City. The letter of introduction turned out to be for a job that didn't exist anymore. The $14 lasted 3 weeks. That was 6 months ago. Now you've got $2 and change, a room the size of a coat closet at the top of a building on Orchard Street on the Lower East Side of Manhattan, and a bed you share with a man named Eddie Szymanski, who works nights at a bakery on Delancey Street, which means he leaves at 10 in the evening, and you get the bed until 4 in the morning when he comes back and you give it up. The bed is never fully cold. That's the point. In 1932, in certain buildings on the Lower East Side, this is called a hotbed. The same mattress, rented by the hour or the shift, passed between workers on rotating schedules. When Eddie comes home and shakes your shoulder at 4 in the morning, the sheets are still warm from your body. When you come back at noon and he's gone, the sheets are still warm from his. The landlord, a man named Mr. Kowalski, charges each of you 35 cents a night for the privilege, 70 cents a night for 1 mattress, 3 mattresses in the room, $2.10 a night every night for a room that measures maybe 12 feet by 8. You've done the math. You've had nothing but time to do the math. And this is not even the worst arrangement in the building. Your eyes open to darkness, not the comfortable darkness of a room with thick curtains. This is the darkness of a room with no curtains at all, where the window faces a brick air shaft, and the air shaft faces another brick wall, and even at noon in summer, the light that makes it down here is the colour of old dishwater. 4 in the morning, and you can already tell, not from the light, from the smell. The smell hits you about 2 seconds after consciousness, and it's not one smell. It never is. A tenement building in 1932 has layers, the way the earth has layers, laid down over years of habitation so dense you could core sample them. First layer, Eddie. His specific smell, the yeasty sweetness of a man who spends 8 hours surrounded by bread dough, but also the underneath of it, the week-old sweat soaked into a cotton undershirt that doesn't get washed as often as it should, because hot water costs money and there isn't any. Second layer, the building. Cabbage. Always cabbage. Someone on every floor of every tenement in New York is boiling cabbage at any given hour, because cabbage is 4 cents a head and you can stretch it across 3 meals if you're careful. The smell has permeated the walls and the floorboards and the plaster, so old now it's structural, a load-bearing smell. Third layer, the air shaft. 14 families, give or take, all of their waste, their cooking, their laundry, their bodies existing in proximity, and the air shaft collects it all and delivers it to your window like a gift you didn't ask for. Fourth layer, the building itself, something wet and dark underneath everything. Mould in the walls, probably. Rot in the floors, definitely. The particular organic smell of old wood that has absorbed too much of human life. Fifth layer, coal. The furnace in the basement burns coal when Mr. Kowalski can afford coal, which is not always. Right now, in November, it's running about half the time. The nights it isn't running, the cold comes up through the floors like something alive. Tonight the furnace is not running. You know this because you can see your breath. Thomas, Eddie's voice. Not unkind, but not gentle either. The voice of a man who's been doing this for 2 years and has learned to keep his transactions simple. It's 4. He's standing at the foot of the bed, still wearing his coat. He smells like rye bread and the cold air outside. In his hand is a brown paper bag. He sets it on the floor without explanation. He does this sometimes. A roll from the bakery, one of the ones that didn't pass inspection. A seam split or too pale on one side. Technically they get thrown away. Nothing gets thrown away in 1932. Thanks, you say. He doesn't answer. He's already pulling off his coat, already moving to his side of the mattress. He'll be asleep before you've tied your shoes. You put on your shoes. They're still laced from last night. You learned early to sleep in your clothes when it's cold and to leave your shoes ready. A week after you arrived in this building, the man in the room next door got his shoes stolen while he slept. He went to work barefoot. November. You don't leave your shoes where they can be reached. You pick up the paper bag. 1 roll. It's hard on the outside, soft in the middle still, barely. You eat it standing up in the dark, chewing slow to make it last, while Eddie settles into the mattress and the springs complain in their familiar way. By the time you finish the roll, his breathing has changed. Out. Just like that. You stand there a moment longer, listening to the building. A modern building at 4 in the morning is quiet. A tenement at 4 in the morning is not quiet. A tenement is never quiet. Not really. Not at any hour. What you hear standing in that dark room with breadcrumbs on your fingers and cold air coming through the window frame, above you a baby crying, has been crying on and off for the last 2 hours. You heard it in your sleep and wove it into your dreams. 3rd floor, you think. Mrs. Pretty's youngest. 6 months old, born in the apartment, because a hospital cost money. Somewhere in the walls, mice. The scratching is constant, rhythmic almost, a kind of percussion. You've made a kind of peace with it. The mice are surviving too. From the apartment below, voices. Low, in Yiddish, a husband and wife talking in that half whisper that means they don't want the walls to hear. You can't make out the words, but you know the rhythm. You've heard it before. It's the conversation about money. The specific cadence of 2 people working out arithmetic in the dark. From the street 5 floors down, the sound of the city that never actually stops. A truck. Distant. But the vibration comes up through the building, up through the floor, up through your shoes. The city's heartbeat. The one that goes on regardless. And from everywhere, from every direction. The sound of the building breathing. The creak of old wood settling in the cold. The hiss of the steam radiator on the landing, which works only on the floors below you, never quite making it up to the 5th floor so that you exist in a kind of permanent cold zone above the warmth of the lower floors, close enough to hear the hiss, too far to feel it. You put on your coat. It's a good coat. Better than the rest of what you own, which isn't saying much. Dark wool, heavy, long enough to reach mid-thigh. You paid $1.50 for it at a second-hand shop on Hester Street in September, and the man before you left his initials in the lining in black thread, R.H. You don't know who R.H. was. You hope he's somewhere warm. You close the room door as quietly as you can. The latch makes a sound anyway. Always does. The stairwell of 114 Orchard Street has 5 flights and no light on 3 of them. You've learned to navigate it by feel. Right hand on the wall, taking the stairs with the particular half-step shuffle you use when you can't see the risers. The wall under your hand is plaster over brick, rough and slightly damp, and at certain points on the 3rd floor landing there's a section that gives slightly when you press it. Soft like a bruise, where the water has gotten in from somewhere above. You count the flights without thinking now. First landing. The smell of frying onions from 2B, even at 4 in the morning. Someone starting their day. Second landing. The sound of a radio playing very low, tinny and faint. A dance band playing a song that seems grotesque at this hour. Third landing. The soft spot in the wall, 4th landing, and then the front door. The front door of 114 Orchard is original to the building, which was built in 1887. That's 45 years of hands on this brass doorknob. 45 years of the wood swelling and shrinking with the seasons, so that in summer it sticks, and in winter it rattles. Right now, November, it rattles. You push it open and step out. The cold hits you. Not the polite cold of a room without a furnace. Outside cold. The kind that comes off the East River and moves through the streets like water, finding every gap in your clothing, pressing against your ears and the back of your neck and the skin of your wrists between glove and sleeve. You don't have gloves. You shove your hands in your coat pockets. Orchard Street at 4:15 in the morning. You need to understand what Orchard Street is, not what it was. A pushcart market, shoulder to shoulder with vendors, the Jewish commercial heart of the Lower East Side, a street so packed on a Sunday afternoon that you literally couldn't see the pavement. That's what it was a decade ago. That's the Orchard Street of the stories people still tell. What it is now in November 1932 is something different. Some of that is still there, the bones of it. The buildings that crowd so close on both sides, the street feels like a canyon. The store signs in English and Yiddish both. The faint ghost of the market. The iron rings in the building facades where the awnings used to hook. But the market is thinner now. The push carts that show up on weekday mornings carry less than they used to. The vendors have hungry eyes. The prices are lower. Some of the storefronts are dark, windows soaped or papered over. Not a lot. Not enough to look abandoned. Just enough to feel like teeth going missing. You notice the gaps. At 4 a.m, the street is almost empty. Almost. There's a man sitting in the doorway of a closed tailor shop across the street, his coat wrapped around him, his hat pulled down. Asleep or not, you can't tell. He's been there the last 3 mornings. Nobody moves him. There are too many of him in this city now for anyone to bother. There's a woman with a baby carriage moving east on the sidewalk, moving fast, not looking at anyone. Not unusual. In 1932, people move through the dark streets quickly and don't make eye contact. You learn that in your first week. And there's a horse. One horse, tied to a lamppost outside what used to be a grocery, now a storage space for somebody's something. The horse stands absolutely still, its breath making little clouds in the cold air, and it watches you with the particular expression horses have, which is no expression at all, just eyes like black glass, taking in everything and giving nothing back. You nod to the horse. You're not sure why. He doesn't nod back. You turn south toward Delancey Street. Here's the thing about looking for work in November 1932 in New York City. You start early. That sounds like advice your grandfather might give you, wholesome and simple. Start early, work hard, good things will follow. The American way. But the reason you start early in 1932 is not optimism. The reason you start early is arithmetic again. There are, by some estimates, and estimates are all anyone has because nobody's keeping clean books on misery, somewhere between 1 and 2 million unemployed people in New York City. The exact number depends on how you count, who you count, whether you count the ones who've given up counting themselves. 1 to 2 million people, all of them waking up tomorrow with the same problem you have. So you start early, not because early risers get the worm, but because if you show up at a dock or a factory or a construction site at 7, there will already be 40 men there ahead of you. If you show up at 5, maybe there will be 20. If you show up at 4, maybe you get close enough to the front. The math doesn't always work out. Usually it doesn't. But you do it anyway, because not doing it is the other math. The one that ends with you in that doorway across the street, wrapped in a coat that used to belong to someone else, sleeping through November mornings. You walk south on Orchard. Your shoes make a sound on the sidewalk that echoes slightly in the empty street. Heel, toe, heel, toe. The left sole is starting to separate at the front. You can feel the cold pavement through the gap when you hit it at the wrong angle. You've been wrapping newspaper inside the shoe for 2 weeks. You change the newspaper every morning. You hear the L before you see it. The 3rd Avenue L. An elevated train line running above 3rd Avenue on iron pillars, up in the air above the street. It's been there since 1878. By 1932, it's been in this city longer than most of the people riding it have been alive. It appears above Delancey like a geometric nightmare, all iron lattice and dark girders, and the sound it makes is unlike anything you'd heard before you came to this city. It's not a whistle, it's not a rumble, it's a combination. The metallic shriek of iron wheels on iron rails, the deep vibration that you feel in your chest before you hear it in your ears, and underneath it all, the clatter of the structure itself, 40 years of bolts and joints and welds all shaken together. When a train passes overhead, conversation stops. People mid-sentence just wait. They've learned not to fight it. The train goes by now, heading uptown. Its lights orange and moving, the vibration coming down through the L's iron legs into the cobblestones of Delancey and up through your shoes into the bones of your feet. You stand on the sidewalk and feel it in your jaw. Then it's gone, and the city's quieter sounds come back. A dog, a car horn, somewhere distant, the wind between the buildings. You cross under the L and keep walking. The Fulton Fish Market hiring hall is not actually at the Fulton Fish Market, which is downtown at the base of Fulton Street. It's a room above a bar on Water Street that opens at 5 in the morning, where a man named Costello, first name or last, you've never been sure, writes names on a list, and if you're lucky, calls them in the morning. You've been on the list 3 times. You've been called once. The work was unloading fish boxes from a truck into a dock warehouse. 6 hours, $2. Your hands smelled like fish for 4 days, even after washing, and the dock foreman kept calling you kid in a tone of voice that was not particularly kind, and at the end of the day he shorted everyone by a quarter, and nobody said anything. You said something. He told you to get out. You got out. You're still on the list. The room above the bar is already crowded when you push through the door at 4:20, maybe 30 men. They've come from everywhere. You can tell from the accents when they talk, the few that do, Irish mostly, but not all. A cluster of men speaking Italian near the back wall. A thin man with his hat pulled low who could be anything. 2 or 3 Negroes standing slightly apart, not because of any official rule, just because of how rooms arrange themselves in New York City in 1932. You find a space along the wall and stand in it. The room smells like tobacco and damp wool and the specific metallic cold smell of men who've been outside before they came in. Costello is behind a table in the corner, writing in a ledger by the light of a single bare bulb. He's a big man, soft around the middle, with small dark eyes that move over the room with the efficiency of someone counting inventory. He doesn't look up when you come in. Nobody talks much. It's too early, and there isn't anything new to say. You've all said everything already. You've talked about Hoover, and you've talked about Roosevelt, and you've talked about whether things are going to get better, and you've talked about where you came from, and you've said all of it until the words have worn smooth and don't mean much anymore. So you stand and wait. The bulb overhead makes a sound, a very faint hum. You notice it because everything else is quiet. The hum of the bulb, the scratch of Costello's pen, the breathing of 30 men in a small room. A man next to you takes out a cigarette and lights it, offers one to you. You shake your head. Cigarettes cost money. He nods like you've said something wise and smokes it himself. Costello looks up. Unloading day. Need 6 men for the fish dock. 6 men for a warehouse on Cherry Street, that's it. 12 spots. 30 men. The arithmetic is simple. It's always simple. That's what makes it so bad. Costello reads names from the ledger. You're on the list. He doesn't read your name. He reads 12 names. And when he's done, he closes the ledger without looking up. and the 18 men who weren't called begin the process of not showing their faces, of rearranging themselves in the room, of finding somewhere to put their hands. One man, older, maybe 50, with the kind of hands that speak of decades of heavy work, just stares at the floor. He stares at it like there's something written there that he's trying to read. You know that look. You felt it from the inside. The moment when the math doesn't work and you have to decide what to do with that. The 18 of you file out. Orchard Street to Water Street is about 1.5 miles. You walked it in the cold and got nothing. Now you walk it back and you need to decide where to try next. This is the daily calculus. Not just the arithmetic of money, but the arithmetic of energy. Walking costs calories. Calories cost money. If you walk to 3 different hiring sites and get nothing at any of them, you have spent energy and worn your shoes a little further and you're no better off and possibly worse. But staying in the room costs nothing except your mind. You walk. Dawn comes slowly to the Lower East Side, partly because of the time of year and partly because of the buildings. The streets are so narrow and the buildings so tall, 5, 6, 7 stories, wall to wall with each other, no gaps, that the sky overhead is just a stripe, a cold grey stripe that slowly, grudgingly, lightens. The pushcart vendors begin to appear around 5:30. First one, then a cluster, then more. They come from wherever they sleep, some from rooms not much different from yours, some, you've heard, from the carts themselves, wrapped in everything they own. They set up on the sidewalk along the length of Orchard Street and Hester Street in Delancey, unfolding their wares onto wooden boards or just piling them in the cart. Vegetables, fabric remnants, second-hand shoes, tools, tin goods, buttons, thread. The prices have been going down for 2 years. The vendors know it. The customers know it. Everyone is poorer than they were, which means the vendors charge less to keep selling, which means they make less, which means they can afford less, which means the customers have less to spend. It goes around like a wheel. You stop at a cart selling hot coffee from a tin urn, 5 cents a cup. The vendor is a woman, maybe 60, her face the map of a hard life, wrapped in a black wool shawl that she's pinned over her coat. She fills the tin cup without speaking, hands it to you. Her fingers brush yours and they are very cold. You wrap both hands round the cup. The coffee's bad, weak and slightly burnt and not very hot. It's one of the finest things you've ever tasted. Cold morning, you say. She shrugs. Her eyes move past you to the street to the next potential customer. You drink the coffee standing at her cart, slowly making it last, letting the small warmth of it travel down your throat and settle somewhere in your chest. Around you the street is filling up. The sounds layer in, cartwheels on cobblestones, voices calling in 2 languages, the distant L again on its iron legs, the particular cry of a vendor 3 carts down. Fresh eggs, fresh eggs. Which seems improbable at 5:45 in the morning, but there it is. The city wakes up, and it wakes up hungry. You need to understand the building before you can understand anything else. Because the building is not just where you sleep. The building is the whole architecture of survival, 6 stories tall, built in 1887 by a developer named Schiff, who wanted to maximise the number of paying tenants per square foot of lot, and who succeeded, according to Mr. Kowalski, beyond any reasonable expectation. 14 apartments, some of them holding 1 person, most of them holding more. In 1A there's a family of 6, husband, wife, 4 children between the ages of 2 and 11, in 3 rooms. In 3B there's a widow named Mrs. Hirsch, who takes in sewing and hasn't left the apartment since September. In 4A, which shares a wall with your room in 4B, there's a man who makes bootleg whiskey in a washtub in the kitchen closet. A fact that is apparently known to everyone in the building except possibly Mr. Kowalski, who lives in the basement. The building has 1 toilet per floor. 5 floors, 5 toilets, 14 families plus the various solo renters like yourself. The toilets are in small rooms off the landing, with doors that don't quite lock and pipes that bang in the cold, and a particular atmosphere that you have learned to breathe through your mouth as a matter of necessity. There's no bathtub. There are 3 cold water taps in the building, 1 on each of the kitchen floors, 1 in the basement. And hot water requires heating it on the stove, which requires coal or gas, both of which cost money. On the roof there's a clothesline. In summer the roof is essentially a community space, people sitting up there on hot nights because the apartments are unbearable. Children running around in the dark while their parents talk and sometimes laugh. In November the roof is a cold, flat expanse of tar paper with nothing on it except laundry frozen stiff as boards. The building has been inspected by city housing inspectors twice since you've been here. Both times Mr. Kowalski gave them something. You never found out what, money or bottles of something from 4A or promises, and both times they left without writing citations. The walls between the apartments are plaster over lath, maybe 3 inches thick. You know the Peretti's schedule as well as you know your own. You know when Mr. Peretti comes home from his night job at the laundry on Essex Street. The specific rhythm of his footsteps crossing the floor above you. You know when Mrs. Peretti puts the baby down and the crying finally stops. You know when the children get up for school, the thunder of small feet, the argumentation of siblings, the eventual silence. You know these people intimately, and you have never had a full conversation with any of them. That's a tenement, not a building. A kind of involuntary intimacy, everyone's lives conducted through the walls, whether they want to share them or not. You should know more about Eddie. Eddie is 28 years old, from a Polish neighbourhood in Brooklyn, and he's been sleeping in the hotbed arrangement with you since August, which means you've known each other for 3 months without ever once spending more than 15 minutes awake in the same room. What you know about Eddie. He works nights at the Delancey Street Bakery, where his job is to mix dough and manage the ovens for the 6-hour overnight shift. He gets paid $1.25 per shift 6 nights a week. $7.50 a week, which sounds reasonable until you understand that he sends $4 home to his mother and sister in Brooklyn every single week, without exception, which leaves him $3.50 for rent and food and everything else. His share of the hotbed is 35 cents a night, 7 nights a week, $2.45. That leaves him $1.05 for everything else. You know this because one morning in September, at the handover, the brief, half-awake exchange at 4 in the morning when he comes home and you get up, he sat on the edge of the bed and put his head in his hands and stayed there for a full minute, not crying, just sitting. His shoulders had a particular shape, a particular angle of exhaustion that you recognized because you'd seen it in your own shoulders, in the small mirror above the washstand. "You okay?" you asked. He was quiet for a moment. "I'm going to figure it out," he said. That was all. Then he lay down and went to sleep. He brings you the imperfect bread rolls 3-4 times a week. He has never said why. You have never asked. There are forms of kindness that are easier to sustain if you don't name them. The other person with a stake in the hotbed is a woman named Clara Wietkauskas, who comes in at noon when Eddie gets up, works the afternoon shift at a garment factory on Green Street, and gives up the bed again at 8 in the evening when you come back. You've met Clara exactly twice, both times in passing on the stairs. She's maybe 40, small and very thin, with hands that are perpetually red and slightly cracked from the work. She speaks almost no English. You speak no Lithuanian. But you know her from the mattress, the particular way she folds the blanket, the faint smell of machine oil she leaves, the impression her body makes, smaller than yours and Eddie's, on one side of the straw. 3 people, 1 mattress. The bed is never cold. There's a bread line at a church on East Houston Street that opens at 7 in the morning. You know the ones closer to the tenement. The relief bread line on Orchard run by the neighborhood association. The soup kitchen 2 blocks east run by a synagogue on Rivington. You've been to both, but the Houston Street line tends to be shorter in the morning, and the bread they give is better. Real bread, not the end pieces and donated stales. The line is already 30 people long when you arrive at 6:10. You take your place at the end. The person in front of you is a boy, maybe 16, wearing a man's overcoat that's too big for him by several sizes, the sleeves rolled up, the hem at his ankles. He's alone. He doesn't look at you. The morning light is coming up properly now, the sky between the buildings going from grey to pale yellow. It catches the steam of everyone's breath. 30 people breathing in the cold, 30 small clouds rising. A man behind you starts talking to nobody in particular. He's been to 3 different city relief offices in the past 2 weeks, he says, and each one has sent him to another one with a different form to fill out, and the forms keep asking for things he doesn't have. A permanent address, references, a record of previous employment. And it's like the city has decided that the only people who can prove they're poor enough for relief are the people organised enough to still have all their papers, which is not generally the condition of the truly desperate. The man speaking is well dressed, not rich, but the clothes of someone who was recently comfortable. A good wool suit going slightly shiny at the elbows, clean shirt, proper tie. He looks like the kind of man who had an office somewhere. He's been saying these things for 5 minutes without stopping. Nobody responds. Everyone is listening, or not listening. Hard to tell. You've been in this line enough times to know. Some people talk too much because they're afraid of silence, and the silence right now is the silence of people who have nothing left to bargain with. And that silence is very loud if you let it in. You don't let it in. That's the thing you learn. You build a kind of internal room, a smaller room inside the room of your head, and you live in that room, and you keep the walls up. When you get to the front of the line, a woman in a church apron hands you 2 bread rolls and a tin cup of thin soup. The soup is potato and something, lukewarm now, ladled from a pot that's been going since 5 in the morning. You stand at the table they've set up on the sidewalk and eat. The rolls first, then the soup tilting the cup. It's not enough. It's never enough. But it's something. It's the base layer. The caloric minimum that means you can walk another few hours without your hands starting to shake. The boy in the oversized coat is standing next to you. He's finished his rolls in about 4 bites and is looking at nothing in particular with the specific expression of someone who is still hungry and has made peace with being still hungry. You tear your second roll in half and put the half on the table between you. He looks at it, looks at you. "I can't eat it all," you say, which is a lie. You could absolutely eat it all. He takes it, eats it in 2 bites, says nothing. He moves off down Houston Street with his too long coat trailing on the sidewalk and doesn't look back. You finish your soup. The garment district is north and west, the area around 7th Avenue in the 20s and 30s, the manufacturing heart of the American clothing industry, which in 1932 is simultaneously one of the largest employers in New York City, and in the process of doing things to its workers that would make your grandmother cry. Clara goes there every day. You've been there twice, looking for work. The first time you stood outside a factory building on Green Street and watched men go in through a side entrance at 7 in the morning and come out at 7 in the evening. And when you asked a man coming out what the job paid, he laughed. Not a happy laugh. 40 cents an hour, he said. If you're a cutter. If you're not a cutter, you're doing piecework, which means you get paid by the piece and the machines run faster than the quote says, and the foreman counts your pieces and you can't argue because there are 10 men outside who'll take your spot. You asked if they were hiring. He laughed again, same laugh, and walked away. The second time, you waited in a line that went around the block and were told at the front, after 2 hours of waiting, that the factory was fully staffed and would be until spring at the earliest. This morning you're not going to the garment district. You have a different destination. Your legs know it before your mind does, the particular direction your feet are taking you, north and east, toward the Manhattan Bridge approach. The Manhattan Bridge is not the most famous bridge in New York. That's the Brooklyn Bridge, half a mile north, with its Gothic towers and the particular romantic quality that photographers have been documenting since 1883. The Manhattan Bridge is the working bridge. Opened in 1909, it carries the subway as well as foot traffic and vehicles, and it is a piece of engineering so large and so relentlessly functional that beauty is almost incidental to it. Almost. You've been walking over it twice a week since October because there's a factory in Dumbo, the Brooklyn neighborhood under the bridge approach, that occasionally hires day workers, and because the walk over the bridge costs nothing when you've already walked the cost of the subway. This morning you stop in the middle of the bridge. Not for long. You're not supposed to stop on the bridge. There are signs, although nobody enforces them. And the wind coming off the East River at this point is not gentle. It hits you from the right, cold and hard, carrying the smell of salt water and diesel and the particular industrial complexity of the river. But you stop and look. The sky to the east is properly light now, winter pale, and the river below is dark and moving, cut through with the wakes of tugboats and the occasional larger vessel. The bridges, Manhattan ahead of you, Brooklyn to your right, make their geometric statements against the sky. And to your left, uptown, in the distance, the thing you have never quite gotten used to, the Empire State Building. It opened last year, in April 1931. Tallest building in the world, 443 meters from the street to the top of the antenna, which was added later that year with the optimistic intention of docking Zeppelins there, a plan that turned out to have practical problems. 1,250 feet of steel and stone and glass, and it's almost empty. That's the fact that sits in the chest like a stone when you look at it. The tallest building ever constructed by human hands, finished right in the middle of the worst economic crisis in American history, and it's renting at maybe a quarter of capacity. The men who work in it joke that it should be called the Empty State Building. They spent $41 million building it, 160,000 workers. And all those workers, the riveters and the iron workers and the stonemasons and the glaziers, when it was done, it was done. The jobs were gone. The building stood, gleaming and impossible, and the men who built it went back to the bread lines. You stand on the bridge in the cold wind and look at it. It's magnificent. It genuinely is. Even from here, even at this angle, even with the sky grey and the wind cutting. Through your coat, it's magnificent. The way it steps back as it rises, those setbacks, narrowing toward the heavens like something trying to escape gravity. The way it catches the first light of the morning on its upper stories, while the streets below are still in shadow. The men who designed it were still alive when you were born. The men who built it were alive right now. Some of them probably in bread lines, some of them probably in rooms like yours, sleeping on mattresses that never got cold. It's that recent, that real. You turn back to face Brooklyn and keep walking. The factory in Dumbo is a printing company. They do packaging, cardboard boxes for soap, cereal, cleaning products. In good times they run 3 shifts. Right now they're running 1. You know the man at the side door. Not personally. But you know his face. The flat way he looks at the line of men who show up each morning. The particular efficiency with which he delivers the same information. Nothing today. 3 words. He's said them to you 6 times now. He will say them again today. You're already certain of this before you've even turned the corner, and he does. Nothing today. The man behind you says something under his breath in a language you don't speak. The tone needs no translation. You walk back over the bridge. You're back on the Manhattan side at 10 in the morning. You have $1.75 left. You burned 10 cents on coffee and nothing else today. You need to eat something before noon, or your hands will start to shake, which means you can't do any work that requires steadiness, which eliminates most things. There's a pushcart vendor on the approach to the bridge who sells hot sweet potatoes in winter, baked in a tin drum over charcoal, wrapped in newspaper. 5 cents. The sweet potato is hot enough to burn your fingers through the newspaper. You juggle it carefully, find a wall to lean against and eat it standing up in the thin November sun. It's dense and sweet and almost enough. While you eat, you watch the street. This block, right at the base of the Manhattan Bridge approach, is one of those New York blocks that has no particular name or identity, but functions as a kind of crossroads for the invisible economy. There's a man selling pencils from a cup, 3 cents each. Another man with a cart of used tools, hammers, wrenches, a level, the accumulated hardware of someone's former livelihood. A woman with stockings hung on a line between 2 lampposts. A boy, maybe 10, shining shoes for a nickel a pair. The boy is doing a brisk trade. His hands move fast over the shoes, the brush and the cloth, the particular pressure on the leather. He's been trained well by someone. He doesn't look up while he works. His eyes stay on the shoes. When the customer walks away, the boy looks up and catches you watching him. He holds your gaze for a moment. Neither of you says anything. Then he looks back to the street, scanning for the next pair of shoes. 10 years old, working to help feed his family. This is not unusual. This is not even remarkable. This is just November 1932. When you get back to the building at 11, Mr. Kowalski is in the lobby. Mr. Kowalski is a short, heavy man with a grey moustache and the permanently displeased expression of someone whose entire business model depends on the ability of poor people to pay their rent, which in November 1932 is not a reliable business model. He's holding a piece of paper. Brody, he says, rent. Friday, you say. I told you Friday. You told me last Friday too. I know. He looks at the paper. It appears to be a list, though you can't read it from here. You're not the only one, he says. Half the building is behind. I've got my own bills to pay. I know, you say again. He looks at you. He has the look of a man who has had this exact conversation so many times in the last 2 years that it has stopped producing any particular emotion in him. He's past frustrated. He's at the flat, resigned place beyond frustration. Friday, he says. It's not a question. It's more like a statement of minimum acceptable reality. Friday, you confirm. He goes back into his apartment. The door closes. Through the walls, which are thin, you hear him lower himself into a chair. You climb the 5 floors to your room. The room when Eddie's gone is different, with Eddie in it, even sleeping, even silent. There's a presence. The room shrinks around him. Without him, it expands slightly. Not literally, it's still 12 feet by 8. It's still lit by the window that faces the air shaft, but the space distributes differently. Clara was here and gone before you came back. The blanket is folded in the way she folds it, not the way you fold it. The newspaper you keep tucked under the mattress on your side has been rearranged. She moved it, looked at it maybe, put it back not quite where you had it. You are, technically, not supposed to be sleeping in this room right now. The arrangement is that the room belongs to whoever is paying for the current shift. Clara's shift runs noon to 8. But Clara's at work and Mr. Kowalski never comes up to the 5th floor unless it's for rent. So you do what you've been doing for 3 weeks. You fold yourself into the corner of the room on the floor, not the mattress, which belongs to Clara for these 8 hours, with your coat as a blanket, and you sleep. The floor is hard and cold, but it's your floor or close enough. You close your eyes. The sounds of the building filter in. Mrs. Peretti's baby, quiet now. The mice in the walls, a radio from somewhere below. The L in the distance at intervals. The particular creak of the building in the wind. You're asleep in 4 minutes. You sleep until 2, which in a depression winter counts as a luxury. When you wake, you're stiff in the hip and shoulder, where they've been against the floor. You stand up slowly, roll your neck, put your coat back on. You have 6 hours before Clara comes back and you can legitimately use the bed. 6 hours that need to be spent doing something. There are 2 main things you can do with 6 hours in a depression winter when you have less than $2 and no work. The first thing is walk, not purposeful walking, not the walking to hiring halls and bridges, the walking with a destination, just walking. The city is free to walk through, and the walking keeps you warm, and sometimes it turns something up, a posted notice, an overheard conversation, a man who knows a man who needs a man for something. The second thing is the library. The New York Public Library at 5th Avenue and 42nd Street is open to anyone. It is heated. It has chairs. It has newspapers. Every major newspaper in the city held on racks near the reading room entrance. And you can sit and read them for as long as you want. The men at the reading tables, and there are always men at the reading tables, dozens of them, at hours when employed men would be at work, have learned to make a cup of coffee they don't buy, and a borrowed newspaper last 4 hours. Nobody bothers you. The library is one of the few places in New York City in 1932 where nobody bothers you. The librarians move quietly between the tables. The only rule is silence, which everyone is very good at keeping, because most of them are practicing silence of a deeper kind. The silence of men who don't have anyone to say things to. You take the subway north, a nickel. It hurts. But your shoes won't last another long walk today, and the calculation is that the library is worth the nickel because the library is warm and possibly productive. On the uptown train, standing, holding a strap, swaying with the car's motion, you watch your fellow passengers. This is something you've gotten good at. Watching. There's a woman with a department store bag, Lord & Taylor the bag says, who sits with the bag on her lap, her hands folded over it, with the slightly exaggerated posture of someone trying to project a confidence she doesn't fully feel. There's a man reading a newspaper whose headline you can make out from where you stand. Roosevelt elected. The date on the paper a week old now. He's reading the article for what looks like the 4th or 5th time. The paper folded and refolded on that page. There's a couple, young, maybe your age, sitting very close together in the way of people who share the warmth, because they have to, not just because they want to. The woman has a mended tear in her coat sleeve, very neatly done, the thread matching almost exactly. The man is looking at his hands. These are the faces of 1932, not dramatic, not picturesque, just tired and careful and making the calculations. The main reading room of the New York Public Library is, without any qualification, the most beautiful room you've ever been in. You felt this the first time you walked into it, in October, and you feel it still. The ceiling is 51 feet high, arched and painted and coffered in a way that suggests heaven, or at least the organizational wing of heaven. The windows are long and high, and let in grey November light in a way that looks intentional, like the light is part of the architecture. The tables are long oak tables with green-shaded reading lamps. The chairs are solid and not uncomfortable. The carpet on the floors is worn but clean. And on any given afternoon in November 1932, half the seats are occupied by men who have nowhere else to be. Not all of them are reading. Some are. Some are sleeping with enough plausible performance of reading that nobody challenges them. Some are simply sitting, eyes open, doing what you do when there's nothing to do and you've been doing nothing for long enough that it's become its own kind of occupation. You get a newspaper, the Times, yesterday's edition. You find a seat at the far end of one of the tables and read with the concentration of someone who needs to make this last. The front page is Roosevelt and the Transition. FDR elected 3 weeks ago in a landslide. He won't take office until March. That's how the presidential transition works, you've learned. But already there's a feeling in the city, a collective intake of breath, a waiting. Whether it's hope or just the pause before the next disappointment, you're not sure yet. On the inside pages, the news from the relief offices. The city is running out of funds for relief payments. The state is slow to provide more. The federal government under Hoover has been resistant. Men in this position, men like you, are told to apply to the municipal lodging house if they have no address, the Relief Commission if they have an address, the Red Cross if they have nothing at all. The forms require documentation. The documentation requires a fixed address. The fixed address requires money. You already knew all of this. You know it better than the newspaper does. You fold the paper and look at the ceiling. 51 feet of gilded plaster, and outside the bread lines, and both things are true at the same time. The man across the table from you is sleeping, deeply, genuinely sleeping, his chin on his chest, his hands folded in his lap. He's dressed in a suit, clean-shaven. He could be a stockbroker, a lawyer, an accountant. He could be anything. He's asleep in the library at 3 PM because that's where the warmth is and he needs the sleep. Nobody wakes him. He wakes himself, actually, at around 4, with a small jerk and a look of momentary panic that you recognise because you've had it yourself. The half-second of waking up somewhere public and not knowing exactly where you are and then knowing and having to rearrange your face quickly. He catches you watching. You look at your newspaper. "Sorry," he says. His voice is cultured. Good school somewhere in it. Nothing to be sorry for, you say. He adjusts his jacket. He has the movements of a man who still operates according to a physical grammar of respectability. The straightened tie, the smooth sleeve, even when the context for that grammar is gone. First time here? He asks. No. No. He looks at the ceiling. Me neither. I've been coming here since August. He says August the way people say words for disasters. Hurricane, train crash, August. What happened in August, you ask? The firm closed. He says it simply. Statement of fact with no drama left in it. You wait. Investment bank. I was a junior partner. 12 years. We made it through 29, through 30, through most of 31. Then August. He falls quiet. He picks up his own newspaper, puts it down again. I keep coming here, he says, because if I stay in my apartment I'll go crazy. And the library is... He pauses. It feels like things are still organised, he says. In here. The books are in order. The tables are clean. The lights work. He looks at the green-shaded lamp. Out there, nothing is in order. But in here. You understand this completely. You understand it so well you don't say anything because saying something would interrupt the truth of it. Where are you from? He asks. West Virginia? Morgantown? What did you do there? Studied agriculture at the college. Then my father's farm went under, so I came here. Looking for what? Work, you say. Any work. He nods. He's not looking at you, but he's listening. I had a ledger, he says after a moment. A personal ledger. I kept track of everything. Every asset, every liability, every investment. I had a column for net worth and a column for projections. Very organised. He smiles slightly. In August, the projections column became meaningless. I kept the ledger anyway. For a while. Then I stopped. He gathers his things, folds his newspaper precisely, puts it back on the rack. Good luck, he says to you. Not the hollow way people say it, with something in it. You too, you say. He puts on his hat, straightens it in the reflection of the window, walks out of the reading room with a posture that says, I am a man who still has somewhere to be. Maybe he does, maybe not. You leave the library as the sky's going dark. Fifth Avenue at 5 in the evening in November is a different thing from Orchard Street at 4 in the morning. The shops are lit. The sidewalks are full. Women in better coats than any you've seen on Orchard Street move in and out of the department stores. Men in suits flagging cabs. The familiar choreography of urban commerce, slightly reduced from its pre-29 version but still recognisably itself. It's a 20-minute walk from here back to the subway, through Midtown and then down. You pass the construction on Rockefeller Center. They're still building it, steel skeleton rising into the dark sky, lights burning on the upper floors, men working even in November, even in the evening, because construction is construction, and it's one of the few things still producing jobs. You stand for a moment watching the upper floors, where something is being riveted or welded, orange sparks cascading against the dark sky. Hot sparks against cold night. A man standing next to you on the sidewalk, also watching, says, My brother-in-law worked on that for 8 months. Good money. They let him go last month. He says it conversationally, like it's the weather. Sorry, you say. He'll find something, the man says, without particular conviction. He walks on. You watch the sparks for another minute. Then you go down into the subway. You hear it before you reach the block. Something about the sound quality of a group of people outdoors that's different from the normal street noise. A kind of concentrated attention. A gathering. The way sound changes when it's organised around something happening. You turn onto Stanton Street at 6:30, walking back from the subway station, and you see it. A family's furniture on the sidewalk. This is what an eviction looks like. Not dramatically, not like a movie, not with shouting or violence, though sometimes it comes to that. Usually it looks like this. A kitchen table on the sidewalk, the chairs beside it, a mattress leaning against the lamppost, boxes, cardboard and wooden both, packed with the portable possessions of a life, an icebox with its door open, a standing lamp with a bent shade, and on the stoop, a woman and 3 children. The woman is maybe 35, wearing a house dress and a coat over it, the coat clearly put on quickly, not buttoned right. She's sitting on the top stoop step with the smallest child in her lap. The other 2, a girl of maybe 10 and a boy of maybe 7, are sitting 1 step below, not speaking, looking at their furniture on the sidewalk with the particular expression of children who are too young to fully understand what's happening, but old enough to understand that something is very wrong. The city marshal has already left. The notice of eviction, a pink slip, standard issue, you've seen them posted on doors throughout the building, is nailed to the door of the apartment. The landlord, or someone representing the landlord, is on the sidewalk making a small inventory of the furniture in a notebook. A group of neighbours has gathered. Not large, 10, maybe 15 people, some of them watching, some of them already doing things. A man from across the street has gone inside and come out with blankets, which he hands to the woman on the stoop without speaking. An elderly woman in a grey dress is loading some of the box contents back into a box with the efficiency of someone who knows exactly which things matter. You know these scenes. You've been passing them for 6 months. They happen every week in this neighbourhood, every week in every neighbourhood like this one. The numbers are somewhere between 15 and 20,000 evictions per month across the city, a figure you read once in the newspaper, and which had the quality of being so large it stopped meaning anything until you stood on a sidewalk and watched a specific kitchen table on a specific sidewalk with specific children looking at it. Then it means something. You cross the street and approach the woman on the stoop. "Is there anyone who can take you in tonight?" you ask. "Family? Anyone?" She looks up at you. Her eyes are dry. That's the thing that stays with you. Her eyes are completely dry. She's past crying, or she's not there yet, or she's somewhere else entirely, somewhere the crying doesn't reach. "My sister," she says, "on Rivington, but it's late." "Do you need someone to help carry?" you ask. She looks at you like she's trying to determine what you are, what category of person shows up and offers to carry boxes. "Why?" she says. It's a fair question. It's the question you'd ask. "Because it's heavy," you say, "and it's cold." She's quiet for a moment. The child in her lap presses closer to her without waking. "The table and the icebox," she says, "those are the ones that matter." There's a man named Marco, from the building directly across the street, who has a small pushcart he uses to deliver vegetables on weekday mornings. He brings it out now, and the table goes on it, and then the icebox, and then as many boxes as will fit. It's 4 blocks to Rivington Street. You take one end of the pushcart, Marco takes the other. The woman, her name is Mrs. Gallagher, you learn. Her husband is working in a factory in New Jersey and sends money when he can, which is not lately. Walks ahead with the children, carrying the 2 smallest boxes. The evening cold has settled in fully now. The streets have their nighttime configuration. The pushcart vendors gone, the storefronts lit or dark, the smell of coal smoke heavier. Your breath makes clouds in the lamplight. The cart's wheels catch on the cobblestones at the crossings. You lean in and push hard, feeling the resistance in your shoulders and across the top of your back. The icebox is heavier than you estimated. It's a decent one, cast iron interior, and it must weigh 150 pounds. Each pothole sends a jolt up your arms. The girl, the 10-year-old, falls into step beside you after the first block. "Do you live on Stanton?" she asks. "Orchard," you say. "Is it far?" "Not very." She walks for a moment. "Are we going to have to move again?" You don't know what to say to this. The true answer is, probably. The answer that does any good is harder to formulate. "I don't know," you say. "Maybe not." She considers this with the seriousness of a child who has learned not to be easily comforted. "Mother says when Papa comes back from New Jersey, we're going to get a better place." "That sounds right," you say. She nods. She's satisfied with this, or she's decided to be. When you get to the Sisters building on Rivington, the sister, a younger woman, also small, the family resemblance clear even in the bad light of the hall, opens the door and takes in the situation with the wordless efficiency of someone who was half expecting this. She takes the children inside first, then Mrs. Gallagher. Then you and Marco bring in what you can carry, the table, the boxes, the icebox they'll deal with tomorrow. In the hallway, Mrs. Gallagher turns to you. "Thank you," she says. 2 words, said the way words are said when there aren't other ones. "Good luck," you tell her. You and Marco walk the empty pushcart back to Stanton Street. Neither of you says anything for the first half block. Then Marco says, "Second one this month, this building." You nod. "Third one on my block," you say. He nods. You separate at the corner without ceremony, each going back to wherever you came from, which in both cases is a building not much different from the one that just got emptied. You don't go back to the room directly. It's 7:30. Clara gives up the bed at 8. You could go back and wait on the landing. You've done it before. Sat on the top step of the 5th floor stairwell, your coat around you, leaning against the wall, waiting for the sound of the door. But tonight you don't want to sit in a stairwell. There's a place on Rivington Street, 3 buildings down from the Sisters building, that you found out about from the man in 4A, the bootleg whiskey man. A speakeasy in the traditional sense. A doorway, a slot in the door, a face, a password that changes weekly, the weekly password being a friend of Paulie's, which is apparently universal and has never failed anyone. Prohibition ends in 2 weeks, December 5th, when the 21st Amendment is ratified, and suddenly what everyone in this room has been doing for 13 years will be legal. There's going to be a party. Everyone says so. The kind of party you have when something that was wrong on Monday is right on Tuesday with no other change except a piece of paper. But tonight it's still the last weeks of it. Still technically illegal, which means the whiskey is still technically bootleg, which means it's still 35 cents a glass. You're going to spend 35 cents on whiskey. This is not fiscally responsible. You know this. You have $1.40 left and rent is due Friday and you have no work lined up. 35 cents is approximately 25% of what you own. But you just carried a family's icebox 4 blocks in November. And before that, you spent a day finding out again that nobody's hiring. And before that you were eating an imperfect bread roll in the dark and listening to the building breathe. Sometimes 35 cents is the only kind of rational there is. The speakeasy occupies the ground floor of a brownstone, a room that was probably once a parlour and is now a low-ceilinged space with round tables and candles in bottles, and a bar against one wall that was built from what looks like reclaimed church pews. It's warm. That's the first thing. After the hours of outside cold, the warmth comes at you like something physical. It smells like cigarette smoke and sawdust, and the specific warm bread smell of grain, alcohol, and people. Maybe 20 people in the room. Mixed, men and women both, various ages. One table of older men playing cards without speaking. A young couple against the far wall. A group of 3 women in their 30s talking with the ease of people who have known each other a long time. You find a stool at the bar and order a whiskey. The man behind the bar is compact and dark-haired, with a thin moustache that he clearly tends carefully, and an expression of absolute neutrality that is the professional face of barman everywhere. The whiskey, when it comes, is not good. It's the 1932 version of whiskey, which is to say it was produced in someone's apartment or warehouse or truck bed under conditions that optimize for volume and completeness of intoxication rather than flavour. It burns going down in a way that suggests it's done some things on its way to the glass that a proper whiskey wouldn't do. You drink it slowly. From the bar you can hear a radio, not loud, it's coming from behind the bar somewhere, turned down, but audible. A dance band. The sound quality is poor, but the music is clear enough. Something bright and formal, a big band playing a foxtrot, the kind of music that in different circumstances would put your feet moving. Nobody in this room is dancing, but nobody's putting it off either. The music is in the room, and the warmth is in the room, and the whiskey is in the glass, and outside it's November in New York in 1932, and for now, right now, that's enough. The man who sits down next to you is named Morris Abramowitz, and he's a tailor who works out of his apartment on Hester Street, and he talks with the particular velocity of someone who doesn't talk to many people, and is making up for it. He's been a tailor for 20 years. He learned from his father, who learned in a small town in Russia that no longer exists. The tailoring business, he tells you, is complicated. People still need clothes, he says. You'd think that means still need tailors, but what they need now is not new clothes. They need old clothes made to fit. They need the husband's suit taken in because he's lost weight. They need the wife's dress let out because he's having a baby. They need repairs, patches. He takes a drink. I know more about patches now than I've known in my whole life. Is that enough, you ask? The repairs? He turns one hand over, the gesture of maybe. His hands are extraordinary. You notice them without meaning to, the hands of a craftsman, the particular calluses in specific places, the left index finger with its needle-pricked landscape of tiny scars. Enough to eat, he says. Not enough to be comfortable. He looks at you. You're not from here. West Virginia, you say. Farmer. Farmer's son. Studied agriculture, though. You can farm in West Virginia? Not anymore. He nods. The nod of a man who has heard many versions of this story. My father came here from Russia in 1900, he says. Nothing. No English, no money, a trade and 2 hands. Now I've got nothing, no money, a trade and 2 hands. He smiles. It's a complicated smile. Maybe it's inherited. He finishes his drink, stands up. Listen, he says. I need someone to help me move a sewing machine on Saturday. Too heavy for one. Takes maybe 2 hours. I'll pay a quarter. A quarter for 2 hours of work. You think about it for exactly 1 second. What time's Saturday, you say? 8 in the morning, 47 Hester. I'll be there. He nods and leaves. You sit with the last of your whiskey and think about the math. A quarter on Saturday, rent due Friday. Gap between those two things requires something else first. Something between now and Friday. The math is still not working. But a quarter is a quarter, and Morris Abramowitz's left hand has 30 years of honest work in it. And that counts for something in a room full of people trying to figure out what counts. The walk back is cold. 11 blocks, south and east, through streets that have emptied now of everything but the essential night traffic. The delivery trucks, the last pedestrians moving quickly from somewhere to somewhere, the occasional police patrol. You pass the building on Stanton where Mrs. Gallagher's furniture sat on the sidewalk a few hours ago. The sidewalk is clear now. Whatever couldn't be carried to Rivington has been dealt with by the neighbours, by the night, by the particular resourcefulness of poor neighbourhoods where nothing that can be useful is left outside to go to waste. The building is just a building again. You turn onto Orchard. The street is quiet. One pushcart still out. A man doing something to its wheel in the lamplight. Unhurried, methodical. The sound of the L in the distance moving uptown. The smell of the night. Cold stone and cold air, and underneath it, always the permanent smell of the neighbourhood. The laves compressed into these buildings. At the door of 114 you stop. Something makes you stop. Not caution exactly. Something else. You look up. The building above you, 5 floors of it, and in the windows, lights. Not many. It's past 9, and people are sleeping who need to sleep. But some. The orange of a kerosene lamp in what you think is 2A. The faint blue-grey flicker that means radio in the apartment below yours. The yellow of a candle, moving, someone crossing a room. 14 families, various arrangements, single men, couples, families with children, various languages, English, Yiddish, Polish, Italian, Lithuanian, various histories, various stories, various particular ways of being cold and tired and managing, all of them in this building tonight. All of them breathing air that's slightly warmer than the outside air by virtue of the collective heat of their bodies, their candles, their kerosene, the soup that's been on someone's stove since afternoon. The building breathes. You push open the door and go in. The ascent is familiar now. You could do it blind, and sometimes nearly do. First floor landing. The smell of onions from 1B, where someone is apparently making a very late dinner or a very early one. There are no ordinary hours in a building like this. The second floor, the radio, clearer now, a man's voice, a news report of some kind. Third floor, the soft spot in the wall, and below it, faint voices. The Abramowitz couple. No, they're across the street. Someone else. Fourth floor, your landing. The door to 4B, your room. The card from Mr. Kowalski's notice is still folded under your door where he left it this morning. Rent due Friday. You know, you turn the knob. It sticks in the cold. Always. You have to lift slightly while turning and go in. The room is warm. Not warm exactly. Not warm by any comfortable standard. But warmer than the stairwell. Warmer than the street. Warmer than the bridge over the East River at dawn. Clara's been here until an hour ago, and 3 people passing through a room in 12-hour intervals leave something behind. Some residue of body heat that lingers in the walls and the floor and the air itself. The mattress is there, waiting. You don't bother lighting the candle. You know the room by feel. 3 steps to the mattress. Sit. Take off your shoes. Carefully, noting that the left sole is separating another fraction, and line them up next to the mattress where they can be reached. Lie down. The mattress smells like Eddie and Clara and you, and the building, and the years before any of you were there. All of it layered into the fabric and the straw, the specific dense smell of inhabited poverty. You have stopped noticing it except in the moments right before sleep. Pull the blanket. The blanket is thin, wool mostly, some kind of mill remnant. Clara has put her coat over it on her side, which helps the insulation. You put yours on top. You stare at the ceiling. The ceiling of your room has a water stain in one corner shaped like nothing in particular, and a crack running from the window to roughly the centre that appeared in October and has grown approximately 2 inches since then. You've been tracking the crack. Not for any practical reason, just because tracking things is a way of having something to do. 2 inches in 6 weeks. At that rate, by spring the crack will reach the far wall. You have theories about whether this matters structurally. You've developed these theories lying in this bed in the dark at various early morning hours, with nothing else to think about. You've learned a lot lying in this bed. You've learned that the building speaks more in winter than in summer. The cold makes it contract, and you can hear it. Subtle adjustments in the old wood, the old plaster, the old brick settling into the new configuration of itself. You've learned that 4 a.m. is when the building is most honest. The day's performance, the getting up, the going out, the trying, is over or not yet started, and what's left is just the building existing and the people in it existing, which has a sound that's different from any other sound. You've learned that you can be hungry and tired and unsuccessful and still think clearly. This surprised you. You expected desperation to cloud the mind. Instead, it sharpens it, in the way cold sharpens things, reducing the world to what matters, stripping away what doesn't. What matters? The rent on Friday. Morris Abramowitz's sewing machine on Saturday. The left sole of your shoe. The role Eddie might leave tonight. What doesn't matter? The crack in the ceiling. Here's what happens between November and March. Not dramatically. Gradually, the way everything in the Depression happens, not with a bang, but with the slow accumulation of days. December comes, and Prohibition ends, which means the speakeasy on Rivington becomes a proper bar overnight, with a proper liquor license and proper whiskey that doesn't taste like it was made in a hurry by someone who was also afraid. Morris Abramowitz takes you there the week after to celebrate something. He doesn't say what. You drink 2 beers each. They taste like civilization. You help Morris move the sewing machine on the Saturday you agreed, and he pays you the quarter, and then he keeps hiring you for other things. Carrying bolts of fabric from the wholesale district. Delivering finished alterations to customers too far to walk to. Moving furniture when a customer pays him in furniture instead of money, which happens twice in January and once in February. By January you're working for Morris 3 or 4 days a week, never more than a few hours at a time, never for more than $1, but consistently. Consistently matters. Consistency is the thing you've been missing, the thing that makes the arithmetic possible. You're still in the hotbed, you're still behind on rent, but less behind, and the direction is better. Eddie gets a raise at the bakery, 10 cents per shift, which seems like nothing, but Eddie explains to you one morning in the brief overlap of your schedules that 10 cents per shift, times 6 nights a week, times 52 weeks, is $31.20 a year, which is the difference between sending $4 a week home to Brooklyn and sending $4.25 a week, which is the difference between his mother having coal for the furnace sometimes and having it most of the time. He explains this with the focused pleasure of a man doing arithmetic that comes out positive. Clara, you learn from Mrs. Kowalski, has a daughter somewhere in the city. You don't know the details. You know it from the way Clara sometimes comes home. Late, later than the usual 8. With the specific exhausted happiness of someone who has spent time with someone they love and the ache of coming back. You know her from the mattress. January is the coldest month. The water in the basin freezes every night. You break it with the heel of your hand, same as always. Somewhere below, the furnace runs every other day when Mr. Kowalski can get coal, and on the days it doesn't run, the cold comes up through the floors so completely that you can see your breath inside the room at noon. But there's something about January. The cold is honest in a way that November's cold isn't. November cold is the start of something. January cold is just cold, and it does what it does, and everyone in the building has already arranged themselves around it, and there's a kind of competence to the survival of it, a familiarity that makes it less frightening than it was before. February brings a series of snowstorms that shut the city down for 4 days total, which means no work for 4 days, but also no lines at the bread distribution points, because the bread distribution runs regardless of weather, and there's something odd and specific about walking to the church on Euston Street in 18 inches of snow to get your morning bread. The street completely still and white, the footprints of earlier arrivals the only indication of the path. The city in snow is different. The noise stops, or not stops, becomes muffled, the hard surfaces covered, the sound absorbed. You walk through it and feel like you've been placed inside something. The L still runs. Snow on the L tracks means a grinding sound different from the usual grinding sound, but it runs. March comes slowly. FDR inaugurates on the 4th of March. You hear his speech on a radio through an open window on Delancey Street, standing on the sidewalk with a group of strangers, all of you facing the window where the radio voice comes out. The only thing we have to fear is fear itself. The man standing next to you says quietly, "That's easy to say." But he keeps listening. Morris Abramowitz asks you in the first week of March if you've been to the top of the Empire State Building. You tell him you haven't. "You should go," he says, before it gets crowded again. "How much does it cost?" 50 cents for the observatory. Top floor. 50 cents. More than you've spent on anything non-essential in 3 months. "Come on," Morris says. "I'll pay. Call it a bonus." You go on a Sunday, walking most of the way north and west from the Lower East Side, because Sunday the subway is nickel fare, and both of you are the kind of men who can do this walk and save the nickel. Fifth Avenue in March is cold, and the avenue is doing its spring preparations, the scaffolding going up on the stores for new window displays, the first tentative signs of the change in season. You pass Lord and Taylor. You pass the Waldorf Astoria. You pass men selling apples on the corners. They're still there, as they have been all winter. The organised unemployment of the apple sellers, the International Apple Shippers Association selling on credit to out-of-work men so that those men could have something to sell, which became such a visible symbol of depression that it entered the vocabulary. He's selling apples, meaning he's hit bottom. The Empire State Building on a Sunday morning in early March. The lobby is, like the library, one of the most beautiful interiors you've ever been in. Art Deco, the style they're calling it, but that doesn't capture it. The polished marble and the bronze fittings and the murals and the ceiling height, all of it expressing a confidence in the future of human organisation that feels almost alien in 1932, like a building from a world that meant to exist but didn't quite make it. The elevator, there are multiple banks of them, takes you up with a particular smooth speed that feels like something between flying and falling. Observatory, 86th floor. You step out into the cold, and there it is, the whole thing, New York City from 1,400 feet up. The scale of it hits you before the beauty does. You already knew the city was large. You've walked it. You've measured it in shoe leather and subway nickel and hours of walking. But from here the scale is simply different. The grid of Manhattan laid out below you with geometric precision, the streets running north-south and east-west, block after block after block, so far that the grid eventually dissolves into distance and haze. The rivers on both sides, the Hudson to the west, the East River to the east, the harbour opening to the south, turn the city into a kind of island fortress, surrounded on all sides by water, connected to the surrounding land by bridges that from up here look like threads. You can see the bridges, the Brooklyn Bridge, the Manhattan Bridge, the Williamsburg, and further dimly, the George Washington, the great grey cables of it against the grey New Jersey sky. You can see Central Park, a rectangle of brown and grey in the upper part of the island. The trees not yet green, the park still in winter dormancy. And in the southwest corner of the park, something else. "What's that?" you ask Morris. "Those structures in the park." He looks where you're pointing. His expression changes slightly. "Hooverville," he says. "You've heard of them. Hoovervilles, the shanty settlements named sardonically for President Hoover, who the residents held responsible for their condition, or at least found useful to blame. Collections of makeshift shelter built in vacant lots, and public parks and under bridges by men, mostly men, who had no other option. There's one in Central Park. There's one in Riverside Park. There are several in the Bronx and Brooklyn in the vacant land near the industrial waterfront. This Central Park one at its peak holds several hundred people. From the 86th floor of the Empire State Building, it's a small dark cluster in the lower corner of the park, barely visible. Nothing you'd identify if you didn't know to look. A few dozen structures, some canvas, some wood, smoke rising from a fire. The Empire State Building cost $41 million and took 14 months to build. The Hooverville in Central Park costs nothing and grows a little every week. You stand and look at both of them, the building you're standing in, the settlement you're looking at, and you have the feeling you had on the Manhattan Bridge that morning in November. The feeling of two things being true at the same time that shouldn't both be true at the same time, and the particular human effort required to hold both of them in your head without one eliminating the other. "You okay?" Morris asks. "Yes," you say. He stands next to you and doesn't say anything else for a while. The wind up here is strong and cold. It comes from the northwest off the Palisades, and it has a clean quality, or as close to clean as anything in this city gets. High enough above the coal smoke to be something like real air. You breathe it in. Below you the city does its Sunday morning things. Streets emptier than weekdays. The smoke from 1,000 coal furnaces and kitchen stoves rising and dispersing. The rivers moving. The parks and the rooftops and the water towers and the L lines and all the rest of it. The Lower East Side is there, though you can't pick out a specific street from here. Somewhere in that dense grid, 114 Orchard Street. 5 floors of people making their particular calculations. Eddie sleeping off his shift. Clara possibly visiting her daughter. Mr. Kowalski in the basement with his ledger. the mattress waiting. You've been in New York City for 8 months now. You came with $14.40 and the address of a job that didn't exist. Now you have. Morris Abramowitz, who pays you for occasional work with a fairness that's almost anachronistic. A bed that's never cold, shared with people whose lives have woven into yours in the specific sideways manner of poverty. Not friends exactly, not strangers exactly, something harder to name. The knowledge of how to navigate a breadline with dignity, how to walk from the Lower East Side to the library and back without wearing through your second newspaper, how to wait in rooms full of men who are also waiting without losing your particular sense of yourself. You've learned the city the way you learn a place you weren't supposed to stay in but somehow have. It gets under you in the way that places do, not comfortable, never comfortable, but familiar. The particular familiar of a place that has asked things of you and you've given them, and it's still asking. We should go back down, Morris says. My feet are cold. 1 more minute, you say. He waits. He's good at that. That night, Sunday night, back in the room after a supper of split pea soup that Mrs. Kowalski made too much of and distributed to the building, in a gesture that nobody acknowledged directly but everyone accepted, you lie on the mattress and look at the ceiling. The crack has grown another inch. You note this with the satisfaction of someone verifying a hypothesis. Outside, the city makes its particular Sunday night sounds. The L, diminished. The distant sounds of the harbour, a foghorn somewhere south. From below, from 3A or 4A or somewhere in the walls, music. Very quiet. A gramophone playing something that might be jazz or might be a waltz. The tinny distance making it hard to tell. You think about the view from the 86th floor, the grid of the city, the rivers, Hooverville in the park, the millions of people in the millions of rooms, all of them making their particular calculations, all of them figuring out the arithmetic. There's a version of the city from that height that makes everything seem organized, planned. The grid says, we thought about this. We decided where the streets would go. We built in orderly rows. The city from above is geometry, is logic, is the idea of civilization made visible. And then you come back down to the street, and there's Mrs. Gallagher's furniture on the sidewalk, and there's the boy in the oversized coat eating half a bread roll that a stranger gave him, and there's Eddie coming home at 4 a.m. smelling like rye bread and exhaustion. Both things are true at the same time. That's not a contradiction to resolve. That's just New York. That's just 1932. That's just what it is to live in a place that's simultaneously the greatest achievement of human organization and the most efficient machine for grinding people down that anyone has ever built. You hold both things in your head. The trick, you've been learning this, is not to let either one of them eat the other, not to look at the grid from above and forget the mattress, not to lie on the mattress and forget the grid. Both are real. You are part of both. A crack in the ceiling and a view from the top of the world, and you're somewhere in between. You know how to break ice in a basin with the heel of your hand without flinching. You know which vendor on Orchard Street gives slightly better weight. You know which church distributes bread on which days. You know that the hiring hall on Water Street posts its list at 4:45, not 5, which means arriving at 4:30 gives you a real advantage over the men who show up at 5. You know which stair in the 5th floor landing creaks and how to step over it. You know the sound of the building at 3 a.m, the specific frequency of its breath, which is different from 2 a.m. and different from 4. You know that the water pipe in the wall behind the mattress makes a sound before it makes a sound. A small preliminary knock that gives you a few seconds before the full bang. You know Morris Abramowitz's handshake and what it means when he offers it at the end of a job. It means the same thing every time. It means, this was honest work. You did it. We're square. You know Eddie's sleeping position. You know Clara's blanket fold. You know the particular way the left shoe feels when the newspaper is fresh and when it's been in there too long, when it needs replacing. You know how to sleep on a floor. You know how to be hungry and still functional. You know how to wait in a room full of men who are also waiting without losing yourself in it. These are not the things you studied in college. These are not the things anyone would tell you to aim for when you were 18 years old in Morgantown, West Virginia, sitting in a classroom learning about soil composition and crop rotation, with the particular arrogance of a young man who's not yet been asked to do anything very hard. But they are things you know. They are real knowledge, with a specific density of knowledge that costs something to acquire. You're not the boy who got off the train at Penn Station in the spring of 1932, blinking at the size of everything, clutching a letter of introduction for a job that didn't exist. You are something else now, something shaped by this city and these streets and this mattress and the people who share it with you, and the bread lines and the library and the view from the 86th floor and the sound of Mrs. Gallagher's children on the stoop in the dark. Something still becoming. The city doesn't stop. You've been here long enough now to understand this not as a metaphor or a tourist's observation, but as a physical fact. The city does not stop. Not at 3 a.m, not in January, snowstorms, not during the hangover of financial catastrophe, not during any of it. The L runs, the bread lines form, the furnace in the basement runs or doesn't run, but the cold comes up either way, and people sleep in it anyway, and wake in it anyway, and go about their particular business in it anyway. The river moves, the ships come in from somewhere and leave for somewhere else. The harbour is never empty. The docks are never fully still. There are men down there right now, in the middle of this night in early March, unloading or loading, doing the physical work that the city requires to remain itself. You're not down there, but you've been down there. You've stood in that hiring hall at 4 a.m, and had your name not called and walked away anyway and come back the next day and done it again. That's the city's deal. The terms of it, which nobody explains to you, which you work out by living them. It will not be easy. It will not be kind. It will not care whether you succeed. But it will be here tomorrow. The streets will be here. The library will be open. The L will run. The pushcart vendor with the hot coffee will be at her post on Orchard Street, and the coffee will be bad and cost a nickel, and you will wrap both hands around it and it will taste like something that matters. The city will be here, and so will you. The candle is out. The room is dark, truly dark. The particular darkness of a room in a building in a city that never stops, where the darkness is not quiet but has texture, has the sounds of the city underneath it and through it. Eddie comes home in... You check the small internal clock you've developed. An hour, maybe less. You'll hear the downstairs door. You'll hear his footsteps on the stairs, the particular sound of the 4th floor landing, and then the door and his voice. Thomas. And you'll get up and he'll get down and the mattress will be warm from your body. This is the life of the hotbed. This is what it means. 3 people, 1 mattress, the warmth of each pass to the next, unbroken, through the night and into the morning and back again. A practical arrangement, a survival mechanism, and something else too, something harder to name. A kind of community made of necessity, a warmth that's literal and also not entirely. You pull the blanket tighter, the sounds come to you in layers, the way they always do as sleep starts to find you, the crack in the ceiling above you, which you can't see but you know is there. The mice in the walls, their persistent geography, Mrs. Peretti's baby, quiet now. The radio from somewhere below, still playing, impossibly faint at this hour, the melody of it reaching you like something from a different world. The L at its long intervals, the shudder of it coming up through the building's bones, the particular breath of Orchard Street in the small hours, all of it, the whole layered texture of this specific place and time and life, settling around you as sleep comes. Tomorrow there will be more bread lines. Tomorrow there will be more doors that don't open. Tomorrow the crack in the ceiling will be the same. Eddie will come home at 4. The left shoe will need new newspaper. Morris will have something that needs carrying or delivering maybe, or maybe not until later in the week. But the week is coming, and it will have in it what it has in it, and the city will be there. Still vast, still demanding, still doing to you what it does, which is ask you to be harder than you thought you could be, and then ask you to be harder still. And somewhere in that process something is being built in you that couldn't have been built any other way. Not comfortable, not safe, not the life you planned or imagined or was promised, but yours, right now, on this mattress, in this room, in this building on Orchard Street, in this city, in this year, that history will call the worst of it. Right now you are warm enough, and fed enough, and alive enough. You have $2.15. You have shoes that still function. You have a quarter coming Saturday, and the knowledge of how to earn another one after that. You have the crack in the ceiling and the view from the 86th floor, and you know how to hold both of them at once. That is more than you had 8 months ago. That is not nothing. The sounds slow. Not the city. The city doesn't slow, but your listening does. The sounds separate from each other, the L and the mice and the radio and the baby and the pipe in the wall, each one finding its own lane, no longer competing. You have been in this room so long it knows you. The mattress knows the particular geography of your body, the places where the straw has compressed to accommodate your shoulder, your hip. The crack in the ceiling has been growing in your specific presence. The walls have your smell in them now, along with Eddie's and Clara's and all the people before you and before them. You belong to this room in the way that people belong to places they never chose, and the room belongs to you in the same way. Centuries will pass. Orchard Street will change. The building may come down and be replaced by something taller, or it may still be there. Some of them still are. Those 1887 buildings, improbably sturdy survivors. But it will be different. The apartments renovated, the plaster replaced, the crack in the ceiling fixed decades ago and then opened again by some new settling, and then fixed again. The L will come down. They'll tear it down in 1955, the 3rd Avenue L, because the city will have decided it's obsolete, that the subway will do what the L has done. The iron legs will come out of the cobblestones, the tracks will be removed, and for the first time in decades, 3rd Avenue will be just a street. The bread lines will end. Not forever. They'll come back in different forms, different decades, different names. But the particular bread lines of 1932, the ones in front of churches and synagogues, the ones you know personally, they'll end. The Empire State Building will fill up. For decades it'll be the tallest in the world, and then it won't be, and then it will be again relative to various definitions, and tourists will go to the 86th floor and look out at the grid and the rivers and the harbour. The Hooverville in Central Park will be cleared when things get better. 1934, 1935. The men who built it will go somewhere, to jobs or to other forms of shelter or to some other arrangement, and the park will be just a park again. But people will still live in this city, still wake up in narrow rooms in the dark and lie there listening to the building, still make their calculations at 4 a.m, the arithmetic of the possible, the sums that have to come out right even when they don't, still carry things for strangers on cold nights, still find warmth where warmth can be found, still hold both things at once, the grid from above and the mattress below, the magnificent and the impossible, the beauty and the brutal, because that's what this city requires and what this city gives. Some things don't change. The human need for a warm place at the end of a cold day, the specific exhaustion that is the body demanding rest, the way sleep comes for you eventually, even in the hardest times, even here, even now. Let it come. Let sleep take you the way it takes everyone in this building, one by one, in their specific beds, in their specific rooms, the particular sleep of people who have worked today and will work again tomorrow. Let the city fade to background. Let the L and the mice and the radio and the distant foghorn and the hiss of the steam that doesn't reach your floor, let all of it go quiet, or go to the place where it's still there but no longer requires your attention. Let your hands rest. The hands that carried an icebox 4 blocks tonight, that wrapped around a coffee cup in the cold this morning, that broke ice in a basin and turned the knob on this door and pulled this blanket. Let them be still. Let the calculations pause. The rent on Friday, the quarter on Saturday, the left sole of the left shoe, the bread lines and the hiring halls and the long walk over the bridge to the factory that isn't hiring. Let all of it wait. It will be there tomorrow. It will still require your attention tomorrow. Tonight you have done enough. You're warm enough, fed enough, alive enough, in a room that knows you, in a building that holds you without ceremony, in a city that doesn't care about you specifically and contains you anyway. The mattress is warm from the people who came before you tonight. Eddie's footsteps will sound on the stairs in an hour, and you'll give the mattress back, and he'll sleep in the warmth your body left. And tomorrow the bed won't be cold. It never is. That's the hotbed. That's Orchard Street. That's 1932. That's the warmth passed from body to body through the night, through the winter, through the worst of it, without ceremony, without anyone naming it for what it also is. Let your eyes close. Let the city do what the city does. Let the crack in the ceiling stay exactly where it is. Let the morning come when it comes. You've earned this rest. The last thing you hear is the L somewhere uptown, its iron-on-iron voice receding, and then gone, absorbed into the particular silence that is a city in the small hours, the silence that is not silence. That is everything continuing at the frequency below hearing, the city breathing, the river moving, the $41 million of steel and glass standing silent in the dark on Fifth Avenue, and 14 families in 5 floors breathing in and out, all of it going on, all of it real, all of it here, and you in the middle of it, still here. Good night.